Hello, guys, and welcome to yet another session. It's been a long time. I know it's lockdown time, and we are still few more topics remaining in our film studies. Today, we will look at Sergei Eisenstein, a brief introduction to the key thinkers in film theory. It's the last unit of your syllabus. We already finished two there, Hugo Munsterberg, and we have seen Rudolf Arnheim. In this lecture, we will see Sergei Eisenstein, and in future, we will be going to see other film personalities, film theory personalities also. Now, let me welcome you to this class, and I hope, as usual, that you guys are safe. Each and every one of you is doing your bit to be safe, be inside home, stay safe. We are still under lockdown. We still will be under lockdown for some more time. There's a lot of confusion regarding when is the exam, when are the classes opening, will there be class. All these questions will be answered soon. Some of them are already answered. Keep checking our website www.staloysius.edu.in to see when this what are the instructions and what are the guidelines we have followed, what is the college doing, what are we doing about your exams and all those things. Keep checking. There are already some messages by the principal on the website. Check them out. Keep checking them regularly in future so that you can get to know when and what is happening, what time are we going to get back, and all those. Everything depends on when the lockdown ends. As of now, it's on May 3rd, so I will try to finish most of my video lectures by that time. Okay, so let's go into today's class. I welcome you all once again, and I'm today going to talk to you about Sergei Eisenstein. Sergei Eisenstein is somebody who is a very popular character when it comes to film theory. He's a very well known film theorist, but he's also a very important filmmaker as well. Sometime back in the class, I was telling you about how there are two types of people. One are the people who theorize about films, one are the people who make films. Very rarely they are collaborating. They very rarely that one person can be both. Eisenstein is one of those rare breeds who was both a filmmaker as well as a film theorist. He is associated with the school of Soviet montage. We'll look into that. We're not going to look into Soviet montage as such, but we look into what are the key concepts given by Sergei Eisenstein for montage, and we look at some of his films which have made him popular. I'll send you I'll tell you a couple of clips you should watch within to understand this video. Maybe you can do it after, or you can pause the video when I tell you to watch and then go and watch those clips and then come back and resume your video lecture. It's totally up to you. That's what I love about these online classes. You can always pause me, which you can't do it in the classroom. Even if you want to do it, it's very difficult to pause. But here you can say pause, I'm going to do this, and then come back. So that's the beauty of this online classes. We'll enjoy it as much as we can. So let's get into Sergei Eisenstein, and we will see what are the key elements of Sergei Eisenstein's theory. Before that, let us see something about who is Sergei Eisenstein. It's pretty important for us to know who Sergei Eisenstein is. He is regarded as one of the world's most creative, pioneering, and influential filmmakers. Remember when he was there, 1898 to 1948. He was before he died even before the second half of the last century began. Unlike Rudolf Arnheim, who had a huge life spanning an entire century, almost 104 years of life, Sergei Eisenstein was pretty ordinary when it comes to lifespan, but extraordinary when it comes to his output, both in terms of theory as well as in terms of the films he has made. So he's considered as one of the world's most creative, pioneering and influential filmmakers. Among the most lauded films in Russia's cultural history. So, this is where I tell you something about his nationality. Sergei Eisenstein was a Russian. Um, he was born into the Kingdom of Russia because Soviet Union was not formed as he was born. You can read up your history and you can see that the Soviet Union was founded in 1917. It was the first communist state across the world, and Sergei Eisenstein was very much part of revolutionary Soviet theatrical scene. He was a designer turned film director and film theorist. Interestingly, his father was an engineer, and he wanted Sergei to continue in the engineering field just like him, but Sergei was not interested in engineering. He was more into the arts and creative stuff. So he said, I'm going to become a filmmaker, and I'm going to um, um, pioneer film cinema for revolutionary purposes. Remember, Sergei Eisenstein was born just when cinema was born. 1895 is considered the birth of the cinema year when Lumiere brothers showed their videos in 1895 in Paris. Sergei Eisenstein was born 3 years later. So when he became adult, when he became of 20 years, it was 1920, birth of the nation had just come, and we had just come to the narrative cinema. Not much was done in terms of history, in terms of theory, and in fact, there were not many movies also. Russia was different from Hollywood, from French movies, from French cinema industry, in the sense that by 1917, by the time Sergei Eisenstein became a figure in the history in cinema of Russia. Had already transitioned into the Soviet Union, and Lenin, who most of you know, is the first ruler, the first person to become the president of, if I'm not wrong, of Russia, the dictator of Russia, Soviet Union. He realized the potential of cinema for propaganda purposes. He said cinema should further reinforce the values of the revolution. Remember, the revolution of 1917 was based on the ideas of Karl Marx, who said the proletariat will become the rulers and we will go into a communistic society. So Lenin wanted all the cinema to reinforce this idea that communism is the best way to go about, the previous regime was bad, blah blah blah. So Sergei Eisenstein made his movies during these times. So he was a revolutionary theatrical scenic designer turned film director and film theorist. So you can see he was both a film director and a film theorist. Eisenstein's films, as well as his writings and theories of montage, have shaped how cinema is made and understood. He's that important. Not everything he said in during his time back in 1920s, 30s is considered valid, but he made one of the first forays into editing. He was very much into cinema editing, and he knew that editing was he said that editing was one of the most important elements of cinema making. So he developed some theories of montage, which we will come to in a few minutes. His movie Battleship Potemkin, we'll see more about this in the last slide when I tell you about his cinema. His film, most famous film of Sergei Eisenstein. When you say Sergei Eisenstein film studies, one movie comes to mind, and that would be Battleship Potemkin. Battleship Potemkin vastly influenced early documentary and narrative directors owing to his innovative use of montage. Again, we come to that word montage. We have seen Psycho's shower scene in the class, and I told you what montage is. I told you that montage is there to, make things much bigger or smaller than they are, compress time, or um, expand time. That's one of the things which montage is used for. I'll tell you to see one particular clip of Sergei Eisenstein's Battleship Potemkin when I explain to you what montage is in a couple of minutes. A scientific materialist and self-confessed atheist. He was Sergei Eisenstein was a scientific materialist. He by materialism, it's not that what we see right now, that is going behind materialistic stuff. No, materialism means the person believes that there is nothing else besides our bodies and atoms and all those things, and when we die, it is just going to be, we are going to be buried over. There's no afterlife, there's no anything else. So a materialist is the opposite of idealist, who believe, again, idealism is not that I am an idealist person. Idealism here means philosophical idealism, which means that there is something else beyond ourselves, everything is in the mind. Whereas the materials would say there's nothing else in the mind. Mind is also made up of material, so everything at the end is matter. And an idealist would say everything is based on the mind. So Sergei Eisenstein was a scientific materialist, which goes in tandem with the tenets of Marxism, who most of the Marxists believe that are materialists in that particular sense. And he was a self-confessed atheist, and he was a harsh critic of religion and spirituality. But yet, you can see there were religious elements, biblical references, religious rituals, and preferences that are permeating his works. You can see it in Battleship Potemkin, you can see it in The Strike, you can see it in October, and Alexander Nevsky. There are many movies he has done. You can see religious elements. Sometimes he's criticizing them, sometimes he's using them for a particular purpose. So let's get into Eisenstein's theory of montage. That is what he's very well known for from a theorist point of view. His work is situated mainly around his idea of his theory of montage. Central to Eisenstein's film work and film theory is the idea of montage. He wrote a manifesto back in the 1920s, which is called Montage of Attractions, and he rejected the idea that dialogue is the most important or the most dominant element of a film. He said that no, dialogue is not. Many people till then believed that dialogue was important, but he said no, dialogue is important, but it's not the dominant element. All the elements, he said, all the elements, set design, lighting, costumes, sound, movements of actors, they all functioned on equal terms, and they formed a fusion or a montage. So here you can see that Sergei Eisenstein's theory of montage takes another aspect away from film editing, which we will see in some time. That also is there, but his theory of montage also includes how a film is made of many different items, like set design, lighting, and all of them combine, fuse together, become a montage that makes the entire work, not just dialogue. That's what his most important, one of the important theories of montage was, that cinema itself is a montage. It's a montage of different things which I have highlighted on the screen here, right here, right? So the word montage has its root in French word monter, which means to assemble. What is editing? You're assembling certain shots to give a meaning to those shots. Then you're adding music, then you're adding dialogues, you're dubbing, you're doing color correction. So many things are there in 2020 April, what we can do when it comes to assemble a movie. In 1920 1920s, 1930s, when Eisenstein was making his movies, he didn't have so much of technology, but editing was still editing. You still had to assemble shots. So this definition also goes to what we saw in the last slide, that cinema itself is an assembly of different things. Set design, lighting, sounds, costume, dialogues, actors, movements, screenplay, everything comes together and everything is assembled together. That's why he calls it montage. Okay, Eisenstein's believed that montage was a theory which operated dialectically. Now let's see what this word dialectically means. This is one of the most important elements when it comes to Marx's theory, Karl Marx's theory. He gave a theory called dialectical materialism. He gave many theories. One of them was dialectical materialism. So Sergei Eisenstein took the uh, concepts from Marx, and he said that montage was a theory which operated dialectically. A dialectic is a mode of thinking in which the entire realm of human experience is perceived as being in conflict. Conflict is important. Now, this is not the conflict which we had discussed in the class, that man versus nature, human versus human, human versus no, it's not that kind of conflict. This is a perpetual conflict. Perpetual conflict means conflict which never ends, and that is the core of the theory of dialectics. Okay, Marx gave this. He took it from a person called Hegel, who gave this theory, who Marx perfected, or Marx made it suit his idea of communism, and Sergei Eisenstein has taken it from Marx. So, what is dialectics? Let us look at a diagram. Hegelian dialectics means, so okay, let's start from the bottom and we'll go up. Hegelian dialectics, which Marx also adopted and then Sergei Eisenstein adopted through Marx, says that there's always something called a thesis, and then there is the opposite of thesis called antithesis. Dialectics say that, the theory of dialectics say that thesis and antithesis are always in conflict with each other. They are always in conflict with each other, and when they collide with each other, when they fuse with each other, you get something called synthesis. Okay, synthesis. There is thesis, there is antithesis, and then there is synthesis. Okay, you can say that cooking is a dialectical process from a very crude point of view. You have basic ingredients. You have onion, which is frying. Then you add ginger garlic paste, the antithesis. It's not exactly antithesis, but I'm giving you just to make you understand how this works. Thesis, antithesis, then they become synthesis. There is a synthesis between um, the sauteed onions, and then there is ginger garlic paste. It becomes synthesis. But Hegel says, and Marx says, and then Sergei Eisenstein agrees that synthesis in its own term becomes the thesis. So synthesis becomes a thesis which has its own antithesis, which fuse together and they become another synthesis. And then that synthesis become the thesis which has its own antithesis. So you can look at cooking. We had the onion and ginger garlic paste. They become a synthesis, and then now they become one particular item. You have synthesis. Then you add tomato. That becomes antithesis. Not exactly, but giving an example. Um, and it becomes antithesis. They mix together and become synthesis, and then again they become a unified uh, become a unified product, and they become synthesis, and they become the thesis. Then you add the masalas, which is the antithesis here. Then you so there's a perpetual fusion here when it comes to cooking. Take the same thing in terms of ideas. You have an idea, and there's an opposite idea. This they fuse together, form a third idea, which is a synthesis. Now that idea also has an opposite idea. I don't want to give examples too much here. When it comes to ideas, I want you to think more of how this dialectic works. If you didn't understand You can go and read more about the dialectical, but it's pretty simple to understand the dialectical way of thinking. There is a thesis A, then there's its opposite, which is antithesis. They combine together, they become synthesis. Over a period of time, this synthesis becomes the thesis, which has its own antithesis. They fuse together, they become a new synthesis. Over a period of time, that new synthesis becomes a thesis and a opposite idea forms. So it's always in constant conflict. That's what Hegelian dialectics is about. So Sergei Eisenstein took this theory and he said you can put two shots together and create something greater than that. That's what his idea of montage is all about. So Eisenstein's theory of montage is characterized by conflict in editing, conflict in the mind of the person, a belief that a concept arises from the collision of two given factors in opposition to one another. Thesis and antithesis are opposite to each other. They collide, there is a conflict, and there becomes a synthesis. Right? Film montage can be seen as the creation of a central or narrative theme from the juxtaposition of specific and often unrelated details. Dialectics works when it comes to montage also. That's what Sergei Eisenstein says. The strength of montage resides in the creative process, which includes the emotion and intellect of the spectator. So there's conflict happening on the screen, not the concept which we are discussing in the human versus human versus, that is the conflict which drives the movie forward. This conflict is in the conflict of editing. You put two shots together, shot number A is a thesis, shot number B is the antithesis. You put together, it becomes a synthesis. To make this understand, I want you to go and check the Odessa steps sequence of Battleship Potemkin. It's there on YouTube. It's around 8 to 9 minutes. You can check how montage works in that, and how, especially, there is a scene where there's a stone lion. So three shots are put together. The first shot is the lion is sleeping. It's a stone lion, so there's no life there. So the lion is sleeping. The next shot is lion is waking up. The third one is lion is rising. That is Sergei Eisenstein's way of saying that montage, that three shots of a stone lion sculpture, is like a metaphor. It's like an analogy of the masses rising. The masses are the lion. So this takes on a different meaning. So go and watch the Odessa steps sequence of Battleship Potemkin. Just type Odessa steps Battleship Potemkin. It's about 8 to 9 minutes. You can watch that. You can watch that, like I said, after the end of the video, or you can stop the video here, go watch it, then come back and continue, so that you can understand what Sergei Eisenstein means by montage. That one of the greatest montage sequences, uh, probably much more important and much more famous than the psycho shower scene montage, is the Odessa steps montage. So any answer which requires you to write about montage should always write about the Odessa steps sequence and how Sergei Eisenstein has used Odessa steps sequence as a way of telling much more than what is happening on the screen, referencing to certain things, like I said about the lion, showing the Tsar's soldiers as the standing for the cruelty of the Tsar itself, the king itself. So go and watch that video. You will understand what we mean by Eisenstein's theory of montage. He says Eisenstein gave 5 specific categories, levels of montage: metric, rhythmic, tonal, and overtonal. And the last one is the fifth one is the intellectual, and it was it was to direct not only the emotions but the whole thought process, right? So go and read more about these 5 things. They're very simple to understand once you understand montage, which I have given you a good introduction to. You can go and check 5 types of montage of Sergei Eisenstein. You can type it on Google, and or you can watch some videos. There are some excellent videos which discuss the 5 types of montage on YouTube, so that you can understand what is metric, what is rhythmic, tonal, overtonal, and the most important one here is the intellectual that I have. That's why I have taken it and made it separate. That's what Sergei Eisenstein gives more preference to the intellectual montage. You can see intellectual montage happening in Odessa steps sequence also. So go check both of those things, Odessa steps and the 5 types of montage. Will continue or our foray into Sergei Eisenstein's theory of montage. Instead of the film editing as a smooth linkage of scenes, according to montage theory, the interplay and synthesis of colliding, different, and even contradictory shots was supposed to shock the audience into new recognitions. Okay, shock the audience into new recognitions. Something else I would want to you to go and check, and that is what is now come to know known as the Kuleshov experiment. Kuleshov experiment. Please go and watch that. Read more about Kuleshov experiment. Kuleshov experiment is simple words. I'll tell you what happened was there was a guy called Lev Kuleshov. He was considered as Sergei Eisenstein's guru, you can say, and he made an experiment where he interposed the same shot of one guy looking at the camera with 3 different shots. So once he showed the guy, and then he showed food. That was one. Then the other one was he showed the same shot of the guy looking, and then but the next shot was a woman, half naked woman, and the third one was the same shot of the man looking, and now there was a dead child with the next shot. Now you can understand. I urge you to go and watch the Kuleshov experiment. It's just 30 seconds video on YouTube. You can watch that. What when he showed the experiment to the audience was like, "Wow, what a great actor this guy is." When he looks at the dead child, it looks like he's grieving. When he looks at the woman, he looks very lustful. When he looks at the food table, he looks very hungry. But what was the thing? It was the same shot of the man, but the next shot was different. So he was shown, the food was shown, he looked hungry. So that is what that's what Kuleshov gave this, and he made this experiment, Kuleshov Kuleshov experiment, and Sergei Eisenstein took that and improved this theory, and he said that there are colliding contradictory shots. Put 2 shots which are not together, but they can provide much more important stuff. They can make people think, they can shock people. Look at Odessa scenes, you will understand what we are talking about here. Shots planned in such a way that they are going to have a much bigger impact than individual shots themselves. When they're put together, they are put together to shock the audience into new recognitions. So let's see some of the films of Sergei Eisenstein. He has made some very good movies. One of the movies here is called The Strike. It came out in 1924. These are available on YouTube if you want to watch them. There is restlessness and planning for a strike in a factory during the Tsarist rule. That is this, I was mentioning sometime back, Lenin wanted movies of Russia, cinema of Russia to do propaganda. That is to make people realize how bad the Tsarist rule was. Tsar was the person who was ruling Russia at the time, and then Lenin and his comrades in 1917 took over through a revolution. They stormed the palace in 1917 and disposed the Tsar. It's a interesting bit of history. I would urge you to go and read it, but not required for film studies. Out of curiosity, you can go and check it. So, restlessness and planning for a strike in a factory during Tsarist rule. That was the theme. You can see that it's talking about workers, union workers images, and how bad the Tsar Tsarist rule was. It used montage. Sergei Eisenstein used montage even here. He used montage to compare and contrast the workers with the bosses and the police informants. He made the police informants and the bosses of the family who exploited the workers, who made the workers work much more than what they were getting paid for. They were cruel. They made them look very bad, very sadistic, very cruel, and they made the workers and their issues much more sympathetic. So it was a propaganda movie, but it's a great movie nonetheless. The second movie which I would like to have your attention is Battleship Potemkin. I have already told you about this. It came in 1925. One movie which is always associated with Sergei Eisenstein, that would be Battleship Potemkin. Read more about the movie even if you can't watch it. It's there on YouTube. 3 hours movie, very nice movie from a point of view of film studies. But if you can't watch it during lockdown, if you're not finding time, at least read about Battleship Potemkin, how they have used Odessa steps. Is I told you to watch about the Odessa steps. It's from this movie. Very beautiful sequence. At least you watch that. It's only 8 minutes. Please watch that. Best known and most influential montage film ever, its central sequence of the film is the Odessa Steps massacre of the citizens by Tsar's troops. Okay, the Tsar's soldiers come and fire on the indiscriminately fire on peaceful people who are just there to welcome the battleship, which is coming in for some reason. So that sequence was filmed so beautifully that it made the Tsar look even worse than what he was, because before the movie came out. So the objective of propaganda achieved. Probably the most famous image from Eisenstein's career and one of the most famous in film history. Battleship Potemkin, one of the most important movies of all time. Then he had a movie called General Line. Then October, 10 Days That Shook the World in 1928. It talks about the Russian Revolution, important movie. Alexander Nevsky in 1938, and Ivan the Terrible. There were two parts, part one in 1944 and two, part one in 1944 and part two in 1945. So let's come to the conclusion now. What did you understand about Sergei Eisenstein? Eisenstein's films, from a filmmaking point of view, if you look at Eisenstein's legacy, Eisenstein's career, Eisenstein's importance, with the possible exception of Ivan the Terrible Part 2, they were all unabashed, enthusiastic propaganda for communism and the Soviet system. He was a propaganda machine. He used cinema as a propaganda machine. Not his fault, that's what the policy was at that time. One of the greatest figures of Soviet montage theory, along with Lev Kuleshov, Ziga Vertov, Asst and Vsevolod Pudovkin. Pudovkin and Sergei Eisenstein were both disciples of Lev Kuleshov, but they had different ideas about montage. It's not there in the syllabus to get into Soviet montage theory, but Soviet montage theory is a collection of theories which talk about montage. Sergei Eisenstein's theory of montage is one part of Soviet montage theory. The others were given by Pudovkin, Shrub, Vertov. Vertov's movie we have already seen. The Man with the Movie Camera, we've already seen. Vertov, you have already given me the review of that. Ones who have not seen, please go and watch that. It's there on YouTube. Go and watch that documentary kind of movie. Ziga Vertov's The Man with the Movie Camera. So film forms, he has written some books. From a theoretical point of view, his legacy is put up together in these books: film form, film essays in film theory, the film sense, and notes of a film director. So that's it about Sergei Eisenstein, a very fascinating character when it comes to filmmaking and film theories. One of those rare people who are both film theorists as well as film makers. Very few people who have qualified to be that. I was telling you in the class also, there are very few people who can both make a film and theorize about film. And we're not talking about writing reviews here. Writing reviews is different when it comes, but we are talking about critical analysis of cinema, critical theorizing of cinema. What we saw about Hugo Munsterberg, what we saw of Rudolf Arnheim, those kind of serious thinking, serious theorizing is needs a lot of reading, needs a lot of reflection. So Sergei Eisenstein was both, and that's his legacy, and he will always be associated with Soviet montage theory, his use of dialectics in theory, in montage, the way he has used, theorized something, and then gone and used the same theory in his movies, especially the Odessa film sequence. So I hope you'll watch that audio Odessa steps scene. Go and watch Lev Kuleshov's. First, you watch Lev Kuleshov's Kuleshov experiment, read about that, and then come and watch Odessa steps scene. Read something about that, and finally, you read about the 5 types of montage which are given by Sergei Eisenstein. So, thanks a lot for listening to this video lecture. I will see you with another lecture soon, and I'll send you these lectures. A couple of lectures I have decided I am not going to make it, but there are some good lectures which I have taken from UGC's scheme, which is awesome. The lectures are good. A couple of theorists they have taken, so I'm going to send you that link and some notes probably regarding that film theorist. So next we will see Siegfried Kracke. That will be the next person, and we still have a couple of 3 or 4 people more. I'll try to finish it as early as possible, and with these things, if I finish this film theories, I'm done with cinema studies as a syllabus. So hope you are all safe, be safe, remember corona, remember these steps, wash your hands, stay safe guys. That's more important. That's why we are under lockdown. Try not to come out of the house if not required. We can get through this together, and lockdown is going to end soon. We're going to see each other soon. We're going to go and relax, come out of the house soon, but until then, stay safe, stay in, and thanks a lot for watching.